Hello everybody and welcome to week number 10 of stage 2 of the Quake Pro League. My name is Ketchup and I'm joined on the desk by ZSX. This is for lack of a better term, just an exciting week. We have important results coming up, matches that matter a great deal when it comes to the relegation matches, you know, the cursed word that some of our players are going to be a little bit worried about now. And if it's not relegation related, it's just damn good games with sick players that we've been waiting to go head to head for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hype week, right? That we got these amazing matchups coming up. And it's the end of the line where, as you say, like, a lot of these matches really do count into final placements, whether it's relegation or going to finals. So it's gonna be a big week.
Yeah, we've done some number crunching and we have the leaderboards coming up soon so we can go over it with more of a visual aid, I'm sure. For anyone that's joining us and, you know, maybe you've not seen Quake Pro League before, there's been a string of weekly online broadcasts. Winning gets you points. The more you win, the more points you get. It really is as simple as that. And by the end of the point, you know, there are players out there that the lowest two from both the Americas and EU/CIS are up for relegation. There have been players competing in the Challengers League who have now actually been decided. We'll get into that a little bit later, who are ready to try and dethrone some of our Pro League players. We have got the bracket actually, so we can see what to look at and what to expect. But fundamentally, 10 weeks of online competition, the points have started to add up, and there are some players where their results today will be a decider whether they're going to be in the Stage 2 finals bracket by itself, or if they have to get through relegation first.
Yeah, and looking down the list, you can see some real big names teetering on the edge. But overall, I think, from my perspective anyway, standings are pretty much where you'd expect them to be. You got the Rafa Kilson to hang, monopolizing that upper echelon of the brackets. But I would say Razy is someone I would expect to be sneaking up there. But apart from that, I mean, it's some real big names in that top 10 pushing through strong. But then you move down the list and you see something like Avek and Dron really on the edge there. Right down to the bottom, we got Waz and Effortless, who are really at the cusp of survival now.
Yeah, and keep an eye on those points. They are the ones that really matter at this point. Ignore the left-hand side. It's all about the right today, because we're talking about players that are ultimately going to want to have a more comfortable situation, I suppose, for the Stage 2 finals. But we're talking about relegations, the players that are in a position where other players can actually steal their spot from Pro League, take them away. And there are players that are worried about that. G-Nick unfortunately is kind of, you know, in that general area. But bottom 4 isn't the only bit that matters today. The top 8 players are still kind of within that area of comfort for Stage 2, because they will be, obviously, the seeding that exists in Stage 2 is there as well. So there's actually many moving parts that exist, but for me, we're going to pay attention to the first few matches coming up. The first series of the day, actually, mattering a great deal for Avek.
Yeah, Avek is he's someone I would love to see a bit higher in the tier, but he can move up. And as you can see in this tweet here,
shouts to Flea, by the way.
Yeah, right. But as we can see, like, if Avek wins a single map against base, he will overtake Shron. So it's a huge game for him, and he is somebody that's not only capable of winning one, but he could definitely take the 3-0 for sure.
He's a player that you can't really count out, right? And then on the flip side of that, Waz has to defeat Effortless with a 3-0, because 2 maps alone, it's just not going to cut it at this stage. You have to get that perfect clean sweep, and then overtaking there with it being Effortless and G-Nick potentially, or if Waz can't, then it'll be Waz and G-Nick. So I'm excited. I think if you are those players, you're going to be a little bit worried, perhaps. There is a lot of pressure riding on these matches, but this is Pro League, right? This is the best of the best. It's not this, I think, player pool that will be crazy worried to the point where it affects their gameplay. You know, they've been here so many times before.
But it is that point where, although you're in Pro League and the pressure is always high, you're at the point now where one mistake does count you out if push comes to shove. So the pressure is exponential, and we might see the right people rise to the top.
Oh yeah, and you factor in the fact that if you're in like Waz's position where it's not just about getting one map to, how many times do we see in Pro League where one tiny mistake causes a map to go and we're like, well, you know, it's not the end of the world because we've got 2 more maps to go. Yeah. Like, that safety net doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. Can you imagine the pressure on Effortless if he goes into that series knowing he just needs to win one single map and he goes down 2-0? That last map is so unbelievably precious that you might see some crazy things coming out.
Well, I think this is the place to see it. Stage 2 of the Quake Pro League. We should have the schedule coming up very shortly. If not, we're going into Av3k. Actually, just been prompted literally right as I said that. Perfect timing. We have Av3k to have a look over. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it briefly at the start of the show. But Av3k is a player that, I mean, this is a series that is important to him. He has to get at least one map. But this is Av3k we're talking about. Getting one map is totally possible against anyone in the world. If you were to say Av3k is going to get straight up 3-0 for anyone, kind of hard to count him out, really.
100%, yeah. Av3k is someone you always guaranteed to put on the show, and you would always expect him to take at least one map. Saying that, he's definitely not hit the highs that we've traditionally seen from Av3k in previous years. And so there is definitely a lot of pressure because Base has been somebody to take big game moments away from the best players. And his playstyle does conflict with Av3k quite a lot, to the point where it might throw Av3k off his game.
It's almost like for me, a silver lining. You know, I guess it's kind of easier said situation here, but if there is one player that would need to just get one map, Av3k's kind of in that pool. So even though this is a scary situation for him, it could be worse. There could be a taller order that would be more like unobtainable. But seeing as it's just one map, it's not as extreme for him, I suppose.
And relative to anyone else Av3k could have played at this point in time to take base, although he's one of the obviously the better players in the scene, it's somebody you should favour Av3k to take one map away for him. And you're completely right in saying Av3k has been in situations far more pressured than this, and he's always come out on top. So you can't count him out for sure.
I mean, it's kind of funny we'd be talking about Base because he's up next, and he's a really consistent player, I think, in Quake Pro League in particular. He's kind of just been a really consistently good performer across the board. He has some pretty good results all the way, and it's not been nice to, I think, see the rise of Base in Quake Champions. You know, you will never forget the days where Base wasn't really a player in a LAN setting that a lot of people were looking at, and then, you know, give it a couple of years. You know, it started off in the days of 2v2, and now as we're going into the evolution of Duel in Champions now being time limit, he's more than held his own. He's looked totally capable, and he's a player that you can always expect to do well no matter who he's against.
I think that's a perfect summarization, is that he's very measured, he's controlled in his playstyle, but for me he's in this weird situation where you never feel like he's fully imposed himself on the game. Like, he's not someone that will really take a map to you and just feel like you've been crushed. The way in which he plays, the calculated style, it almost leaves you always in with a chance, because he never seems to run away with matches. And so there's definitely areas of improvement, but ultimately it's an extremely rounded skill set, and he'll always push everyone to a hard game. You never get an easy win against Base, but you can also always feel that they win a chance against Base.
So we have the picks and bangs coming up real soon, and kind of a lot to talk about, I suppose, with that, seeing as we're going into a one map scenario. If you're
basically,
talking about Av3k, no pun intended.
It's almost a best of one for Av3k. You know, one, and he's pretty happy to chill. So he'll always just want to come away with more than that. But as you say, as long as he gets one, he's a happy man.
But Base, he's been a lot of fun to watch too. You know, he has got that disciplined style, and with Base, it's quite fun in the situation that he's not afraid to slow the pace down, and he is, you know, a highly defensive player in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's just, I feel like there's a lot of character in that, especially on some of the maps. You know, being really famous on a map like Blood Run. How many of these replays come on Blood Run whenever Base is being there? It's always interesting to see, but there's the constant talking point of, now we're in week number 10. Normally we'd be talking about, okay, well, how many maps is someone going to win? 3-0s are super important. There's, in many ways, kind of like a single win condition here, and that is Av3k's to take. He has a lot more to lose here if he doesn't quite get the result he's after than Base does.
Yeah, Base is in a comfortable position. He doesn't need to win. He doesn't need to lose, if you put it that way. So you're right, it's a completely carefree game for Base, but I mean, as you say, it's Pro League. Every point counts at the end of the day, and no one wants to give away anything to any opponent.
Week 10's always that point where you look back at previous maps and previous results and go, if I just won that one map there, I wouldn't be in this position right now. But we have finally got the picks and bans, so we can see what the champion picks are going to be, the maps that we're loading into as well, starting off actually with the Blood Run, Awoken up next, and then Vale of Pnath. Across the board, pretty small and pretty close quarters. It's going to be Ranger versus Visor, BJ versus Nyx, and then finally Death Knight versus the Sorlag. What do you think about the picks when we're talking about just the one map situation for Av3k?
I mean, the Death Knight's a really unusual pick. Obviously, we never see it come out all too often. I do feel that Base, on my opinion, has got much more of a rounded set of picks. I would prefer Visor, Nyx, and Sorlag across all three of those maps, as opposed to what Av3k has in Ranger, BJ and the Death Knight. However, Ranger and BJ are definite comfort picks for Av3k. He picks them pretty much week in, week out. And there isn't an awful lot to vie between the two. If Av3k can keep the pressure up on Nyx and Awoken, Base is going to find it exceptionally hard. But there isn't a huge amount to separate the two in that regard.
I guess the one element here is that Death Knight is one of the champions that is very much seen to be map specific.
Sure.
It's not very, not much of a Swiss Army knife is Death Knight. Vale of Pnath is one of the maps you'll see. Another one obviously being the Corrupted Keep, which is more about just the range, right? If you're on a map where you're likely to have constant close range fights all the time, that's where the Flame Strike starts to matter a lot. The area denial of some of those key locations. If we're on Vale, like the Mega up top, we often see the Flame Strike come out because it just puts that little bit of damage out there.
Against the Saw Lag, the effectiveness of that is slightly less than just to the size of the health pool, but nevertheless, you're right. It's a very good way, in a similar way in which the turrets are used in other scenarios, as you say. It's that kind of denial of space to kind of seal off these key areas. So it's I mean, it's an understandable pick. We just didn't see it all too often.
So if we're talking about predictions, what do you think? Do you think there is at least one chance here that Av3k will get a map here?
100%, yeah. I'm never going to cut him out. I do say I favour Base's picks, but at the end of the day, I expect Av3k to walk away with the one map out of this series and see a 2-1 going out for Base.
Yeah, it would be fair to assume, and it's almost kind of like the luxury, really. Even if you were to predict a 2-1 to Base, Av3k will already have, almost like both players win in that regard, right? Because avoiding relegation, we've seen it before at the Stage 1 finals, and no one wants to be in that position for Stage 2. Not after all this work. It's going to be the Prince versus Mr. Karate going into map number 1 here. I heard that, but we're going into right now. Av3k first with the immediate rail. Unfortunately, not quite getting the damage he's after, but in and out pretty safely for the heavy, so it could be a ton worse.
Yeah, 100%. One of the keys on this map will be for Av3k to try and control the vials because of the piercing sights effectiveness. So it is something to consider moving forward into this map, that if Av3k doesn't have a good shot at that, then Base will have some exceptional vision going on. But a pretty measured start from both. Great rockets coming out, and somehow Base gets away with that.
It's quite concerning. At the very start of this map, Av3k has had some pretty common rail misses, actually. A fair few of those rails, most of them didn't hit their mark at all, even though Base had kind of given himself up to that angle on more than one occasion. It's almost kind of poetic that the final rail that lands, Base has that tiny little bit of stack left that if he just hit one more, would have been a much more favourable position for him. But right now, Base in the lead, and this is based on Blood Run. One frag can be worth 5 if he plays his cards right.
Yeah, it's a really frustrating map to play against any competent player. Base obviously being one of the most prominent in that scenario. Av3k, though, does have the advantage of having that orb as he pushes in for the frag. Really clean. And that's one of the benefits we didn't discuss in the opening sequence of using Razor on this map, is you can close those gaps, which can be, as you just rightly said, so frustrating, better than virtually any other champion in the game.
It's very rare that a champion on this map gets crazy verticality. And Ranger's often kind of one of the most easier ways. You have Athena there as well. We have seen some pretty crazy Athena on this map. But without doing self-damage with things like rocket jumps, Ranger has a bit of extra luxury there.
Exactly.
Now, making the chase, actually. Avek just trying to put on some of the pressure, keep him as far away from heavy as possible. And there's a nice little delay, actually, in between the two items so far. So if Avek's able to kind of run this, the circuit in the middle of the map, he's actually looking for a teleporter. He's looking to spring a trap. With the Dire Orb in play, he could totally delete him here. But Base is not looking to take that risk.
No, you rightly say. Good 10-second split on the items, meaning Av3k can now really capitalize upon this opportunity. Pretty sure he knows roughly where to find Base. Could be pushing in here if he feels confident, but that double rail is definitely going to hold him at bay just a little bit.
So far, Av3k has had a real issue hitting those rails. It's unfortunate because he's been in a position to get some real damage on deck, and he just hasn't been able to hit its mark here. But if it's going to be a 1-1 for now, it could be worse. He could be far behind in missing rails. It's always a much scarier position, but yeah, finally hits one. But Base, he's kind of just sitting out in the open now. I almost feel like he's more than caught on that a lot of these rails are not hitting.
Yeah, Base is just doing a good job of maintaining that difficult position up around the corridor area and making sure he gets good timing on both items as well as hitting some exit damage. So it's
stopwatch
tactful from Base, to say the least.
Understanding that Av3k, he's going to control the center of the map, which means he's going to control the two items. And Ranger with a huge, nice rocket for sure. No rockets left. He doesn't need them really to get the kill. Is he trying to bait? Oh,
Nice.
the 2 birds with 1 stone. If he uses the teleport, that's almost like a win-win, right? If he uses the teleporter, he'll get the super shotgun. And if he doesn't use it, he'll just teleport to it and finish the job. Base was kind of damned if he do, damned if he doesn't.
Yeah, I was about to say I would have done it the opposite way. I would have shot the orb back into the teleporter exit. Nevertheless, endpoint was the same.
You very rarely see players put in those positions where it truly is like the perfect like pincer,
Just
no matter what you
catch-22,
do.
yeah, exactly.
Beautiful stuff there from Av3k, and it's given him a 3-1 lead. So
Nice.
Fantastic foundations. Great rail. Base with pretty much no armor is going to be quite tender, and his retreat to the armor might be quite predictable here. Av3k knows he's going to be safe to collect this. There's really nothing to worry about. Misses the rail on the other side. Isn't going to really allow too much free damage during the rail cooldown, so Base forced to jump down again, but Av3k, the orb, Base actually not sticking around looking to try and get damage on the heavy there, just looking to retreat instead.
But as we pointed out, after getting that initial frag, Av3k has really done a great job of making sure the items are perfectly split and keeping Base off the map entirely. This is why Base has to play so defensive. But he's not doing anywhere enough damage in between item pickups to keep Av3k from maintaining this aggressive push.
Well, if you're Av3k and you just need one map, this is certainly one hell of a way to start it. That is some delicious tri-bolt at the same time. And it's just constant damage being peppered out, combined with the fact that he's maintaining control. So Base, rarely in a position where he can even feel comfortable enough to take a fight, constantly running away. And Av3k, see if he's going to put some of that famous Av3k aggression to use. Going to get another one of those frags here, looking to try and catch him. Looking for a rail shot. Doesn't quite hit its mark, but Base, importantly here, even if you're not getting the frag, he's still miles behind in the stack. Trying to get some of those immediate rockets, minimal damage in all honesty, and with the heavy just about to spawn, perfect position, rail's gonna land, Base way too weak.
Now Av3k is even picking up the light armors as well, meaning Base's life is nigh on impossible. And because the fact that he's not doing enough damage or getting onto any items whatsoever, Av3k has absolutely no fear or pressure stopping him from pushing into these aggressive kills.
And Base couldn't even try and, if he was pretty much on death's door in that situation, didn't even have the stack to try and like just get rid of the heavy before going down. The luxury wasn't even there. So on top of losing the frag, Av3k has just kept control at the same time. There's no little victories here.
The one thing that Base did do is to get on that heavy armor. This is why we see Av3k playing slightly more cautious, but he is very early for this. Unfortunately, that Base doesn't have the weaponry to push at all. Because of that, was in the wrong position at the wrong time.
Well, we just look at the clock that's left, and that's plenty of time for Av3k to now, if he wants to switch up. Actually, it looks like he's not going to. Trap's going to be sprung. No interest in taking a fight, though. It's going to be a race to the Mega. Base is going to collect. The rail is going to come out for Base instead there, though. Wonderful shot. And there's a chance here, for sure. We've seen almost 100% Av3k show so far, but there's plenty of this map left if he's able to get a decent sequence going. Base catches him on the heavy, but takes loads of damage in the meantime. And for Av3k, normally that's just a win, right? Take away one of the main items.
Oh, he's come out
just retreat.
So much healthier than Base on that. The one thing that Av3k does not have is a rocket launcher at this point in time, so he needs to go on that, but he's also missed out. Oh,
but he had to hit that rail, though, without a rocket launcher. Thankfully, he did. Comboing it into the Dire Orb. The gift that keeps on giving is that Dire Orb. You can use it in between rail cooldowns. So even if you hit the rail, you're not going to be a sitting duck like most other champions in that situation.
Yeah, Base looks a little bit rattled, if I'm honest with you. His timing's been off. Now Av3k's starting to find his groove and hitting these shots. Base doesn't have an answer at this point in time, and with 3 minutes left, there are 4 frags is a fairly big lead on Blood Run.
Goes for the opening piercing sight shot there for Av3k. Has put him weak for the second one, but the first one didn't quite hit its mark. So Av3k fortunately surrounded by little pickups there, so he can get himself back up to a nice little normal stack. And with that heavy just about to spawn, even if Av3k wants to, he could maybe push in, but right now it's more about just trying to be careful, right? Don't give up anything. Speaking of which, the rail doesn't quite hit. If it did, that definitely would have been a fantastic situation for Base. But now Av3k's behind. The one difference between who's behind now is that Av3k has the frags to work with. He can be as obnoxious as he wants with this kind of runaway game. Just over 2 minutes left on the clock. And the perfect Dire Orb. Can he actually retreat from this? He's chasing it down. Damage and the missed rail! Av3k perfectly playing that fight.
Absolutely. I think even if he hit the rail, it would have been a mutual frag at best, because Av3k would have got that rocket off. And so Av3k, as you say, is being obnoxious. He's playing the corners, and Base is forced into these positions where he doesn't want to be.
Well, Av3k had a A very obtainable task at the very beginning, but it's looking like more than doable here, as this is all advantage. He has to really colossally, I think, make a mistake to even run a risk of losing this.
Yeah.
Even if we haven't already hit that point of no return. We've got under 2 minutes left on the clock, and on a map like Blood Run, as defensive as it is, and it favors that runaway style. The Dire Orb's in play. Ranger's got a good stack. He can just, if he wants to teleport, did he even get a bonus rocket here? How weak is base? Can he even try and make chase?
I mean, the Mega is still up. I don't think base realizes he's going to see now, but he's missed out on it. And if he doesn't hit that rail, then he's in a lot of trouble.
Minimal damage on the Tri-Bolt. He's going to get the heavy here, but at this point, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, there is almost nothing base can do at this point in time. Avic's going to play the teleporters. He's got the Dire Orb to extend his distance away from base on the chase. Good rails coming out. If he hits one more, but he doesn't.
Now base looking for some extra speed just in case doesn't get the rail angle. He was half a second too late on that one. And now Av3k just plays the runaway man.
And he got the Mega as well, meaning that rail will not finish off Av3k.
And again, base, if he wants to chase that down, he can't really. It's all thanks to the Dire Orb, just the relocating. This has been a great display of Ranger so far.
Exactly, yeah.
So far, but then that's a great result for Av3k. He going to get one more final frag?
Yeah, I mean, Av3k, the pick makes perfect sense seeing it in action. Appreciating the way in which base plays, using the Dire Orb, very calculated to either close distances or get away. So, worked out exceptionally well for Av3k.
Well done. That's really all you can say about that one. The goal here was not necessarily to defeat base all the way through. It was to just get at least one map because Hron and Av3k were so close on the leaderboards. Av3k's going to get that map. Congratulations and well done. That should, by all accounts, mean that Av3k is in the clear.
Yeah, and you can see the difference in pickups. That monopolization of the items in the mid-game was just way too much for base to handle. But ultimately, the differences in damage isn't too high. It was just the effectiveness that Av3k pulled out in the fact that his damage was going against base, who had no stack to work with. Whereas base, when he turned it on his head, was chasing Av3k around the map. Av3k picking up items on the way and just couldn't do enough to finish him off.
Yeah, and a couple of moments where even when base managed to land a frag, he wasn't really in a position where it's like, right, he can make loads work with this, because often his stack was crazy low at the same time. Av3k, fresh off spawn, can just pick up something important, and then it almost kind of just takes that balance and throws it out the window because Av3k is back in a good position.
And back to the notion of picking the champions. The fact is that Av3k played Blood Run exceptionally well, and that's why he won the game. But to get the lead in the first place was because of these exact frags where he was using that Dire Orb to most effectiveness.
This was my favorite frag of the game.
That was great.
That was a base. You were between a rock and a hard place there. There really was not much he could do.
But it was those two frags that essentially gave Av3k the lead and distance he needed to finish off the map. And so, as you rightly said, it was a perfect display of Ranger.
Absolutely, and then as we sort of progress here, you can start to see the champions really sort of come into full force. And matchups matter, and having real skill with these champions matters at the same time. It's not just playing the map crazy well, it's this extra edge, like right there.
Yeah.
The Dire Orb in between the rail cooldown was is one of the reasons. And a lot of these frags, just look at the difference in stack here. Not so prominent near the end, of course, because this was more of a runaway game, right? Av3k getting that bonus frag near the end, and at this point it was already a done deal. Av3k had done the hard part, and after a pretty rocky back and forth in Stage 2, at the very last week, he's been able to do just enough to focus on the bracket and not relegation.
It's good. It's always good to see Av3k in those positions. For me, he's one of my favourite players to watch, and I think his skill potential is insanely high. I just love the mix of strategy he has, the aggression he pulls out, and the occasional flights of aim he can pull out as well. So he's just an exceptional player to watch.
It's why it's been, I think, difficult to count him out too, because you always talk about Av3k. When the time to bring it comes, he'll bring it.
Yeah.
Whenever you look at Av3k in like a LAN setting, this is the most important tournament where a lot of players will be a little bit nervous, and maybe they're not. Even some of our sort of new blood players like a Wenger, who you know that he's going to be an online god, but when you go into LAN, there's still like a lot of him. He has to kind of find his feet, like an early Razy in the same kind of regard.
Yeah.
But because Av3k has that legacy, even if he doesn't do amazingly well online, the second LAN's there, you always hear all the players be like, "Oh no, I'm definitely worried about Av3k because he's Av3k." And now we're online.
It's that weird dichotomy, as you say, is where they're online and the potential, you can't really see the full potential, and in the situations where they should feel the pressure, that's where they come through. And it's very similar with Cypher and Cooler as well. These players just excel in those high pressured LAN environments, whereas some players, as you say, particularly the newer players that see, might be slightly more trepidatious in those particular matchups.
So now we've got one map out the way, and that was the win condition here, really, being the final week. But one of these players still needs to get the win. You know, that final win, whether it's going to be Base or Av3k here.
It's all about pride now, I think.
Now
for
it's
sure.
all right. So you got your bit, but now I'm still going to beat you. So that when if we have to play in bracket at any point, you'll still be worried about me. You know what I mean? I don't want you to forget this.
I do think, thinking back, at Base may have 3-0'd Av3k. He won at least 2 maps from my memory back in previous weeks. So a bit of sweet revenge, I'm sure, will help Av3k along his way.
It's actually, when you were looking at the situations too, that Base was a little bit more, I think, carefree going into this because he knows he's okay.
Yeah.
So you can, some players when they're comfortable, they'll just be a bit more fluid and it kind of almost, there's less to worry about. So it's almost like more muscle memory. So the rails are better and the movement's just whatever. Very minimal mistakes. We would see that from players almost like in the earlier days of Quake Champions. But now both players, I think, are going to be quite comfortable. It's more of a, well, now we're both just trying to win and there's really nothing in the back of anyone's mind. So there's more of a even playing field, I guess. Mentally, it's more of just, we're just dueling now for 2 maps.
Yeah, it's a chance to mix up strategy, a chance to try some things out. But at the end of the day, they're all competitors. They all want to win, and you could see the way in which Base was playing that last map, how calculated it was for the first few minutes until Av3k began to steamroll and get some momentum. It was Base and traditional Base, whether it was a week that didn't matter or for survival, it was still the same Base that came through.
So if memory serves, it should be Nyx versus BJ on Awoken up next. So you talked about that steamroll style. Nyx, I mean, she either works or she definitely doesn't sometimes.
Yes.
You know, we've seen players do absolutely amazing things with Nyx in Pro League where it's all about, you know, that sort of careful style, the Ghost Walk kind of being a get out of jail free card. But BJ, I mean, very few champions can contest with the damage, and in the hands of a crazy aggressive player, it's a match made in heaven, really. But now Av3k, he's done the hard part, and now it's about just trying to see which of the 2 players gets those final bragging rights as we go into Poland. So here we go. Let's get things started with Av3k.
Yeah, and just on the matchup, it is on paper and in theory a natural counter Nyx, you could say, because as soon as you just pop that dual wield, you just Ghost Walk away and it's nullified.
Ooh, hello.
But whether it works in practice, who knows? And that's a nice start from Av3k.
Perfect read. I mean, just I have a real feeling you're going to use the teleporter here. Let me just fire this just in case. And Base being a little bit too quick to take the bait, perhaps. And a beautiful opening rocket. Base 2 times. I know you're fresh off the spawn. You're likely going to want a rocket launcher, mate. And I'm going to just pepper out some of that spam just in case you do.
But Base has managed to claw his way back in, but Av3k with the dual wield will get the frag because Base had nothing to respond to that.
With that immediate 2-0, this is Awoken, so a small frag lead like this may not last long. It can really go in the blink of an eye, but with what Av3k's been able to immediately establish, and the fact there's a tiny... Oh my god, his tri-bolt has been so good for the 1 minute we've had this map.
Yeah, I mean, Av3k is somebody who's known for his projectile aim. His hits scan aim back in the old Quaker days. It was the plasma gun he was such a brute with, and using the tri-bolt to effectiveness.
I mean, he's just getting perfect reads too, right? Like,
yeah.
He kind of just has this inkling that Base is going to try and go around this corner, presses it at the right time. It's experience, right? Just knowing who you're against and what their tendencies might be.
Yeah, and the issue with Nyx on this map in particular is because of the scale of the map and how small it is, you're under constant pressure, and someone like Av3k is particularly adept at putting it on you, and so you have to be extremely well positioned at all times, because as we saw in the first 2 frags, if you get caught out of space once without a Ghost Walk up, you are definitely going to die, and that is a lovely rocket nullifying that entire pickup.
Almost every projectile has been bang on the money for this entire map so far. It kind of comes into that danger of Nyx, where she's harder to hit than most champions, even though you'd never guess it with the shots that Av3k's been hitting so far. But it all comes down to that smaller stack. The Ghost Walk exists, and Base actually not going to be putting the trigger on it. Looking to just double back, take the stack away, just a heal up first.
And Av3k kind of power posing Nyx away just then, just showing no fear. He's in a bit of trouble here as he could have been railed.
Ooh, that was a fantastic rail at the last minute. trying to hold a couple of multiple angles. Definitely reactionary on the right-hand side, and it's going to put base even more further behind. And these missed rails are going to be really just the opening for Av3k to go full speed ahead. Base running for his life right now.
Av3k is desperate to pop out this Ghost Walk because that's his opportunity to get a frag.
There's a lot of composure and discipline for players at this level like base. A lot of Nyx players in those positions, I think, would have popped that Ghost Walk just to try and guarantee they can get away. But base, confident in his own defense and ability to kind of just outrun those shots, and that's been some great damage. Hang on the jump pad. Half worried there for a split second, but base was crazy weak. Can't risk getting hit by a single rocket.
But you can see the amount of pressure coming out of Av3k. Wherever base goes, Av3k is there in his face. And the one thing is that BJ doesn't have those movement capabilities like Nyx does to be able to get across that mid-ground so easily. So base is able to use that, but Av3k is really absolutely everywhere. Base has nowhere to go.
It's just that feeling of never being able to escape, and even more perfect damage.
Yeah.
And the perfect read of just, you know, you're likely to go down near heavy. That angle was set up 3 seconds before he even went near it.
Yeah, I've been in situations like this, and you just feel, you genuinely feel suffocated because you don't know what to do. You can't get on items. You have no stack to work with. You're a light champion. Like, what can you do in these situations? Av3k is just limiting you. Anytime you pick up a light armor, he's around a corner spamming you out. Every little bit of chit damage is exponentially painful on a champion like Nyx.
And at the same time that the Ghost Walk has kind of served no purpose so far.
Exactly.
And as BJ continues this massive stack, the rampage of Av3k, who just looks completely unfazed by everything right now.
And once again, that base can't get on any major items. Like, what can you do as a Nyx without a major item? This is the problem.
And the Ghost Walk is to escape. Like in those situations, using it to initiate here would be a death sentence because you haven't got the stack to work with.
Yep.
Av3k's got the dual wield ready, and if you use it to go in, you have no escape option. For the most part, base has been, with the exception of the wall jumping, I guess maybe some of these situations, he's been kind of playing championless so far. There hasn't really been an opportunity approached to make this more of an even matchup with, you know, I have extra abilities that you don't have and vice versa.
I mean, the situation is that base obviously wants to play the rail game, and that the fact is that Av3k is not only returning those rails, but he's getting in positions earlier than base to deal the damage. Now base has managed to get on the map a little bit more. He has a bit of a situation where he can capitalize. But
oh, beautiful rocket, and finally Ghost Walk.
Yeah, full spot the Ghost Walk means he has to then return to go. Do not collect $200. So he's back to square one.
Yeah, and after a rocket like that, base is very tender. Even after the heavy that he's been able to take, it's about trying to back up and get those small bubbles just in case. Av3k, he knows Mega likely to be mine, but will hold the fort just in case. And in this situation, Av3k has a pretty sizable lead.
Yeah.
Another rocket! Like, his rockets have been spectacular. All map long, and the SSG, thank you for the rocket boost, mate, as I'm now going to go even closer. 5-0. Av3k looking so good, SX.
Yeah, no fear. I mean, just running at base and forcing base into situations where he has to hit the shots, and he's not hitting them at the moment.
Fighting fire with fire. You're going to try an LG, mate. Well, how about mine? But these rockets have been fantastic so far. Finally manages to secure a frag. We have to look at what's on the map. You know, the Mega has spawned, but base really weak. And even at this health, he's pretty much railable. And thanks to the spawn and the disengage, he can't even fight for the Mega. Av3k, fresh off the spawn, gets full control in like, 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
And all the while, the map is ticking away. Yes, it is Awoken, but there's still only 4 minutes left. And once again, base with not very much to work with. Needs to try and get on something, but Av3k's going to get a clean heavy. Not so clean. This is an opportunity, but he does pick up again the Mega. Av3k blocking those choke points with heavy rockets. Base learning his lesson from earlier encounters.
But now base is kind of back into that classic thing where he's trying to stay defensive and look for those rail angles, but you can look, he doesn't hold an angle for very long. You know, because it wants to be, as little exposed as possible. Av3k's been hitting a lot of these shots, and a lot of his accuracy, the rail has been spectacular, but a lot of it has been coming down to Tri-Bolt and Rocket combined, and those things will destroy a Nyx in these situations. And even more damage. Wonderful rails looking to go in for the kill. The rail coming through just in case. He has got the Mega, but at what cost? What is around to pick up that he can stay alive with? Because there's no armor here.
Nope.
And with the stack that Av3k's working with, like, this is a scary situation to be in if you're base.
100%. Base was greedy in so much that he wanted to save the Ghost Walk, and because of that, Av3k hit 2 rockets that made it count.
Had Av3k not backed off with the heavy in mind, I have no doubt that would have been a rail follow-up as well. After that rocket that just knocked him clean up, and now the LG pushing in. You have got access to a Mega, but who's going to win this 1v1? Base with no armor. He has to make sure he hits most of the shots, and the SSG swap manages to get some fantastic damage right there.
Similar to earlier frags, now Base is left with not a lot to work with, and Av3k obviously going to spawn with a very comparable stack at this point in time. And we can see a definite shift in the playstyle of Av3k as the clock is ticking down. He's playing a lot more defensive, playing the higher ground a little bit more than he was in the early game, and just a lot slower. He's going to have to force out the Ghost Walk here, I think.
Wonderful weapon choice there from Av3k at the same time, where LG is realistically you kind of have to rocket jump, but well, you have to come up to me, right? So any option you choose to take, the LG will more than happily deal with that and push away. Which even though Base didn't quite get the rocket angle he was looking for there, the LG still sufficiently just denied any hope he had of fighting for that one.
Yeah.
Now Heavy's about to come here, and
nice,
nice, yeah, good stuff there.
Well, a minute and a half to go, only 2 frags in it. He will pick up this heavy armor very cleanly. Av3k can get on the Mega if he is quick.
Oh, the Ghost Walk guaranteed it.
I think he might have just heard that as he went around the corner, because I did see him on the wall just to twitch around a little bit.
Oh, that one missed rail, that hurts.
Yeah,
you felt
really
that
hurts.
one. You feel that one right there.
It's a little bit of story of Base's life on this map. He has been missing a few more shots than we would traditionally expect from him. But once again, Av3k in a position to make that count.
Now, Base, this comeback is still totally possible. The danger he has is that he does not have the stack. He can't realistically get hit by anything here.
But he has to compete. He can't let's go for free. And once again, it doesn't matter, but he did miss the shot.
Torso ripped from his body right at the end there. And there was a lot banking on that fight. Av3k with the last minute bits of denial, just to really squeeze away any ounce of a pickup he can here. And you mentioned the plasma earlier on, asking you shall receive, but this, by all accounts, should absolutely be a win here for Av3k, and making it a 2-0 against Base. So it's been saving his own skin and then some. A fantastic result for him.
Impressive 2-0 at this point. Particularly this map. I felt on Blood Run he looked a little bit rusty, particularly in the early exchanges, but this map he came out guns blazing, and I really enjoyed the way he strategized this map with the pressure he put onto Base. And it is the way you need to play against Nyx. You cannot let Nyx get in her comfort zone, and he didn't let him do that for a second.
Overall, it's just been a great performance from Av3k, and if anything, it's just great momentum and a great sort of feel-good moment as we now are only a couple of weeks really away from another major LAN. So if you can come off with a win against Base here, and there was a lot riding on it, you know, all the pressure was on Av3k's shoulders, and he's more than turned up today. This is just great morale for him going into Poland for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'd always expect Av3k to turn up when push comes to shove, but to see it in the weeks preceding a major event is definitely something that should give Av3k fans a lot of hope going into Poland.
But we can see a whole bunch of these replays here. It's just most of these will kind of be the Av3k show, realistically. Yeah. And it was Base for, you know, the second the map began, in less than a minute's time, we saw 2 frags clean, one after the other. And it's again a matter of matchups where it was stack versus not so much stack. And the dual wheel didn't even really have any impact at all. It was rarely used. And
just to play devil's advocate, the fact is that despite all the pressure we're talking about coming out from Av3k, the score only finished 6-3. That is still a close game on Awoken when we have seen kind of 20 frag leads in some situations, right? So Base, once again, the master at mitigating damage, if you will, in terms of scoreline damage, whereas Av3k, as you say, didn't have an opportunity to capitalize on the fact that he had that dual build at his disposal. I think we only saw 1 frag, or maybe only one use of it. Likewise, we didn't see any aggressive uses from the Ghost Walk from Base, or it was solely defensive, and that's not a situation you ever want to be in either.
Right, so final map scenario. It's either going to be a clean 3-0 for Av3k, which is just ultimate momentum, if anything else, or Base's opportunity to just get that last laugh and make it a 2-1, so it's not going to be as bad. I mean, there's always that kind of final moment where we're in the final week of Stage 2. No one wants to get 3-0'd on the final week because it's just something to remember as you go into LAN, because it's a result to learn from.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a great situation for Av3k, really. Just to get a 3-0 and feel good, we'll see if he can do it. I think with how he's been playing these past 2 maps, it's totally possible. But the one potential thing here is the Sorlag versus Death Knight matchup. That's the one sort
It's
of
the one I don't know
bit of
about.
unpredictability, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a highly unusual matchup. It's one I don't think I've even played in my time. I might have played it once or twice. And so it's not the make or break it, but it's going to play a factor in the game. And as you rightly say, on recent performances, you have to give the edge to Av3k. I'm going to give it to Av3k just because of the recent performances.
I mean, Sorlag can steamroll as well.
Sorlag can.
We've seen her just fly around this map. There's just so many moving parts. It's the giant stack. On a map as small as this can be quite scary because a lot of these fights that have been going in the favour of base, he's been ending the fight with not a whole lot of stack. Not as prominent if he's fresh off spawn with Sorlag. On a map which is so small and the fights are so kind of explosive and often as they are on Vale. Well, I guess we're moments away from actually finding out. Overall, though, it's been a great way to start the entire broadcast. It was a matchup that mattered a great deal. Av3k has risen to the occasion and even more than that, getting himself a 2-0. So he is going to take the victory versus base today. The question is it 3-0 or 2-1?
3-0. Or 2-1.
Well, we're checking out base first. Was able to get immediately pinned down and more. Nowhere to run. That is unfortunate.
There goes the fire, blocking out Av3k, but nowhere to go. We've got fire against acid.
The element, I suppose, here is unlike Corrupted Keep. You never forget the passive of Sorlag, where if she's in acid, she takes no damage. Whereas Death Knight will. It's kind of the one small little thing that you might give to Sorlag in this matchup. Besides the stack difference, of course. But Death Knight is all about damage. And that's something that Av3k has had in droves today. So many of his shots have just been fantastic. Across the board, really. Not just Rail here. LG. Obviously, Sorlag will be way more vulnerable to that LG damage thanks to the giant hitbox of the large champions. And once more, Av3k trying to just defend here, but there's some great opening damage. Base swapping to the rail, a brave play, but unfortunately with those rails, that one missing just gives Av3k that opening to just be extra aggressive. Looking to chase him down, he's really trying to deny the Mega first.
You crazy, Av3k. Is he going to die? Oh, he is! Wow.
Can Av3k get them both, though? Is that one flame kill? Nah, he's going to get beaten to the punch. But at least he gets a rail without having to go too far out of the way. That was a odd exchange, to say the least, but a fight.
Yeah, base is trying to fight fire with fire and not coming out on top at this point in time. Av3k doing a great job of just hitting clutch rockets.
You can totally see Av3k's point of view, though. Like, if he just got that one frag and denied the Mega, it's I've got the frag, I took the Mega, just double back and get the heavy before he respawns, and it would have put him so far behind, and a quick switch to rail. These last-minute quick switches, they've definitely been more favorable for Av3k so far. Base has kind of missed a couple of those last-minute rails, and it's not just the fact that he's not getting the frag, he opens himself up for so much damage. Like, that entire sequence of Av3k making the chase came down to that missed rail in the first place. This, not such a good situation, but with missed rails, he's got to be so careful. Has to swap to the LG just at the last second and say, can you just die, please?
Pretty chaotic at the minute. We're waiting for somebody just to take hold of this map and really lay down the law, but neither player willing to give up any room.
There are some rails, yeah. He's getting them at the end, but there are some rails that I'm really surprised to see base missing. Fortunately, though, he's able to just kind of pick up the pieces, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but this has been quite an unusual map, I have to say.
Yeah, it's not what we expect from base. Obviously prefers to play a lot less chaotic than this, wants to slow the pace down quite a bit more. Av3k forcing the issue, but base quite happy to respond in kind.
Kind of just reminds me of the 2v2 days where base was just often the star fragger of a team. If it's chaos you want and you want frags, then you can still try and bring that to the party. But not so much in duel here. But he's able to get the heavy at least. We're just going to let him sort of pressure on. Nice little rocket jump just to guarantee the Mega. So the control does belong to base so far. But that natural large stack is going to be helpful too. Through the fire and flames, he gets a nice little rail on there. It is going to be returned by Av3k, but even at this health, he can afford to take one. The Flame Strike is going to somewhat shut that down, thanks to the health bubbles, though, putting the flames out.
Ooh, yeah.
And the rocket, that must have been a direct.
That was a direct, yeah. I think he had exactly 100 health. So base overcommitting there ever so slightly, but might be able to get onto this heavy armor, if not the Mega.
Trying to shut it down, but he's in a bit of a strange angle here. There's lots of walls nearby for splash damage to matter a great deal. The swap to the SSG, gonna get some good damage, but microseconds too late on that rail is gonna have an opening here to push in. Gonna just try and heal up and just get a gauge for where you're gonna retreat. Gets the perfect actually read there on base, but still a little bit vulnerable. But that's a scary position for base. Yeah, not much he could really do to escape that with a stack he didn't have.
Av3k capitalizing upon the fact that base was cornered in that room, understanding that he got back out using the teleporter build. Av3k now in a little bit of trouble, does pick up the Mega. Can he get away?
Ooh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And there's been some great reads coming out from Av3k, just getting a perfect play on where he thinks base is going to go. In that situation, it was, kind of maybe you expect me to use teleporter, so you try and create some more space here. There's so many other options that people could have, and Av3k's been kind of bang on the money most of the time. It's allowing this frag difference to just escape at this point.
Yeah, completely right. His positioning, overall use of angles has been far stronger than base.
And he's looking for the angle for a second time. And the tri-bolt, it has been somewhat of a real MVP weapon. Knocked off. Perfect play with a rocket. This has been some insanity coming out from Av3k so far. Fantastic shots here.
I think he nearly did 200 damage from the bottom tier there. That was just incredible.
Even the flame strike almost hit direct on vertical. Like, just Av3k has just been crazy impressive with his shots so far. And it's just been, base looks a little bit lost here.
Yeah, he looks so confident, Av3k, and that's scary. And you're right, base does look lost. Seems to be playing a slightly different game. Maybe it's because he's on that Sorlag, but it doesn't seem to be suiting his playstyle.
You're so used to seeing Sorlag players kind of bully their way around the map because of the stack and the movement combined.
Because yeah, we're seeing Av3k. Oh, sorry, Av3k. We're seeing base trying to pick up the pace a little bit, but Av3k is just reading every single movement, ensuring that he is getting the opening damage. And time and time again, base is going into his fights on the back foot and lower than Av3k.
How many times do we see a fight break out where it starts from a string of LG or an opening rocket, where base is the one that takes the first bit of damage, and he's automatically on that back foot position? And the plasma, so good! And the damage on a Sorlag, it does, again, come down to that good accuracy and that large hitbox that the large champions bring, where if you can get a good string of nails, it's fantastic. And that's actually what the swap to the SSG is all about. Expecting base to pile in face first, and he gets the almost max spread of damage. And he answers back with a shotgun of his own, but he's pretty far behind here.
Yeah, 5 frags, but it is a map where you can claw back frags in quick succession. He knocks Av3k out, and that rocket was so close to hitting.
Av3k getting some good damage, but it's not going to be enough. He has to try and waste a little bit of time, but only so much you could really do in that part of the map. You either zig or you zag, and in that part you zagged. Getting good damage from the LG on the spawn. Damage over time.
Oh,
really mattering, and hang on a minute. What even just happened there?
That's more damage than you expect because you don't see it a lot.
The strength when Death Knight works.
Yeah,
and the Flame Strike hits its mark in combination with everything else, which Av3k has been more than happy to oblige with. From map 1 until map 3.
What a
delicious rail as he jumps down. Fantastic stuff there from base.
I mean, we just said you can claw back frags in quick succession, and base is already making up quite a sizable difference here.
This is where the mobility and the size of the map combined allow these comebacks to really make chase. Base is now looking to get another frag. Av3k running away with his tail between his legs. He's looking for a rail and doesn't quite take the shot. And hesitant, causing a trade there because of the damage.
Okay.
My word.
But no, to your point, it is the first time in the game where base was able to generate a stack to work with. And that's when we see the speed come out as a real big feature. Until then, it was him just running into Av3k, but now it is back to even kill. Somehow Av3k does an insane amount of damage to bring back to level terms.
And this is the strength of where the matchups can matter. It's the fact that he's hitting his direct shots as often as possible, and then you have a real damn good flame strike added to it. And it's even on a champion like Sorlag, that's as chunky as she is, you still have to like double take. And unfortunately, again, base, the rails weren't quite hitting as the damage was unreturned. Av3k looking to get in and out with the rail. Doesn't want to give up too much of an angle, though. This comeback is still totally possible, even with the time that we have left. It's only 3 frags that base needs. And you just daisy chain a couple of those together, you're laughing.
But Av3k doing a great job of taking away all core items from base. I think he picked up both the Mega and the Heavy, as well as getting, or at least cutting out the light armor areas as well, meaning base has to double back to get anything to work with.
Avic's not going to be too disappointed letting him take heavy now. As long as he gets some decent damage and denies the Mega, there's a light right there.
Yeah.
He hasn't got too much to kind of, lick his wounds to. And it's clock, just ride the clock. A great position now where he gets a lot of, audio cues. Just hear about where he is. Springs a trap there for some bonus damage on base. Base has to really hit some of this and doesn't stick true. Nice. Wastes a couple of seconds. 1 minute warning with 2 frags to go. This is close to being a 3-0 here for Av3k. Base in a good position to... If he just needs to get a frag quickly...
He should be able to finish off Av3k here, because Av3k has nothing to work with, but look at that tick damage. Wow.
And he has to disengage. He has to try and restack if he doesn't get fragged along the way, which,
in a lot of trouble
knowing
here.
Av3k,
yes,
he's looking for another frag.
And
perfect
that's good
play.
Yeah, really great play. I mean, the Flame Strike does considerable damage than I expect, and I think Base expects as well.
And the rail, looking for a final one. Base really fallen victim to that. The second he's that close, there has to be a kind of like a lucky miss, really, for Av3k. For Base to have a hope of that one. He is going to get a frag here, but too little, too late. Av3k has just done a fantastic job at the end of the map of just getting those small little annoying frags, not just to make the score difference bigger, but to waste all that time where Base has to re-engage. That was some delicious LG. Unfortunately, that's not going to be near enough. Av3k coming off week number 10, keeping himself in the fight, and now he has to worry about the bracket rather than relegation, and just great morale. 12 to 10, that was a crazy map, but he gets the ultimate victory here today.
He does, and you don't know if you saw in the statistics there, but there was a 1k damage difference. Av3k on 5.8k and Base on 4.8k. You can just see the amount of pressure that came up from Av3k, because he wasn't, as on previous maps, he didn't do an amazing job of kind of cannibalizing all items. But what he was doing, he was getting in positions to deal a significant amount more damage than Base could return.
Ultimately, though, with that being the first series of the day, I think that was quite a cracker to start things off with.
That was really fun.
So many storylines, and there were so many just things to worry about if you were in Av3k's position. And shortly after map number 1, that was just not a worry for him anymore. And he's able to finish things off with just a great morale boost here, getting that 3-0 versus Base, who is absolutely no slouch. He's been one of the most consistent players we've had, not only in Stage 2, but Quake Pro League in general. Base is absolutely one of the best. And Av3k, in some ways here, really kind of returning to form. And you rarely see Base kind of look that unsure in some of those situations. I know at the end of the day it was 10 to 12, but there were a couple of moments at the end where the damage was being done by Av3k so much that Base was in kind of like a lose-lose position. And you very rarely see that from Base.
Yeah, and you saw the first couple of frags of this highlight reel. They were just from positions that Av3k should never be able to get frags from, let alone deal damage from. And so it's incredibly frustrating that Av3k can just do this to you, because you always have to be on your guard and in an equally strong position, otherwise Av3k will be able to just completely steamroll you.
But straight off this series here, that just means that Base, if anything, there's just matches to review. We know a lot of players of this caliber, they review VODs, right? They look at maps. There are some players out there that always say some of the biggest piece of advice if you're an upcoming, competitive player. They say, watch your losses.
For sure.
Because losses really matter, and you have to look at what did I do wrong here, and what are the small little areas where I made a mistake that just allowed a whole sequence of disaster to go forth. Base didn't look, completely dismantled in those maps, but ultimately Av3k just got that final little bit of clutch, those final moments, and those weird frags that you wouldn't expect. They were kind of the frags that either finished the maps or they started just the chain of events that allowed Av3k to get a huge level of control and a pretty big frag difference in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, and there is a lot of learnings there. I said in the introduction that the playstyles do contrast quite a lot, and that might work in Base's favor, but what we saw there is as soon as Av3k got on top, Base looked relatively clueless in a lot of situations. So that's what you need to look at, is when these situations arrive, what did I do wrong? Because there were definitely, particularly on Awoken, there were definitely a number of situations where he was just running into kind of blind alleys and hoping something was going to work. So he needs to kind of reflect on that and reassess on how can he get onto the map when he's under such pressure.
There was also the element of quite uncharacteristic rail misses too. Some of the frags, they almost took like a couple of seconds too long because there were a few misses first. Eventually, yes, he was able to get the rail that mattered, but there's just a little bit of time there where you have to factor in that Quake players have to time so many things, right, that if it takes like an extra couple of seconds to get a frag, then I don't know, maybe you might be a little bit out of position trying to take the next big item or something very similar. Just that absolute efficiency that Base is normally known for. We didn't quite see that fully step up, but Av3k is a player that did step up, and more than that all the way through the maps in general. I wouldn't have expected a 3-0 here today.
No, it's definitely one of the better series that Av3k has played throughout QPL, if I'm honest with you. The fact that he just looked like the Av3k of old. He was on point with his aim after the first half of Blood Run. His pressure was up there, and he was just taking some incredible fights and positions that no other players pretty much on the planet can do as effectively as he can.
Right, so that's going to be series number 1 done and dusted. Up next, we are going to go for a quick break very, very soon. But Dramis versus Cygib. For me, this is, if anything, just a great opportunity for Dramis to show the world just how far he's grown as a player, because Cygib is held in extremely high esteem as one of the best players in the Americas region. But Dramis, when we talk about player growth, Dramis is like one of the main players you think about, because the beginning of Stage 1 Dramis versus the end of Stage 2, it's like you're not even looking at the same player anymore.
No, for sure. And Cygib is someone who surprised me. He's always been a great player, but now he's right up there as one of the top competitors. So he's also somebody that I think has come on an incredible amount in the past year or two. But you rightly said that. Dramis is somebody we speak about pretty much every week when he comes on, because he just seems to be taking incremental steps, and it's fairly big steps along the way. His aim and mechanics have always been top notch, but he's now developing a much rounder game, where he to the point where he can be taking maps off these top players.
And at the same time, you look at how he performed at the Stage 1 finals in Italy, and there's a lot of promise there. At no point did Dramis look like super lost. When we look at places like, you know, the beginning of Quake Pro League, QuakeCon 2019, where a lot of kind of the Americas players didn't do so hot in the everyone plays everyone stage,
sure,
which was kind of an overview at kind of what the general talent pool of players was looking like. Who was the players that weren't so hot at the very beginning versus the absolute best of the best.
Yep.
Dramis was kind of on the real lower end of quite a lot of those, just by results alone. And this, I think, is why when you look at the results he's been able to recently obtain versus players that would otherwise give him a really hard time in the past, it's just been impressive to see that. But what I'm actually quite excited for too is he is one of our players that we've been able to score an interview for the weekly show. So when you're ready, take it away.
Welcome everybody to another Quake Pro League interview, where today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Dramis. So you've had a very strong stage so far. What has been the main difference for you between stages 1 and stage 2?
I'd say stage 1, I had a little bit of a slow start. I had some things going on, some personal issues that were causing me to, I guess, mess up a little bit on like my map picks, just little things that I know I can do better. But stage 2, I came in a lot more focused after losing in Italy. Like, I wasn't happy with how I played there. So going into stage 2, I didn't have a job anymore, so I was solely focused on Quake, and I think that's had a big impact on how much I've improved.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, kind of speaking of the time you have to sort of practice and prepare right now, what are your kind of focuses on coming into a matchup each week?
I take each match, I guess, the same as far as like what I'll do to prepare, because each player is different, and you got to play the player, not like you can't just go into it just expecting somebody to do one thing that you're used to seeing them do. You got to expect like versatility from everybody, and I've just worked on not underestimating anybody, so I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in the Americas, it's kind of hard to argue that Rafa and Zahang aren't the leaders of the pack. What are your kind of views on the current state of the Americas in QPL?
I'd agree completely with that. Rafa's definitely at the top. Like, anybody who's playing, he's just dominating. There's a few people who can like take a map, but again, like, he gave me my map choice. So I mean, it's kind of hard to say. But yeah, Zahang's definitely number 2. So going into it, I think he doesn't practice as much. So I think that's somebody that like is passable if you're gonna keep putting in the work. But Rafa's always putting in the work and changing his game. So I definitely agree with that. It's like Rafa to Hang, you're trying to just be number 3.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's really interesting. Like, do you feel there's any particular players that could be in contention to sort of knock them off those top spots?
As like a new player, I feel like I'd be able to improve enough to actually like compete with them. I know a lot of these players they've been playing with they've played over and over like throughout the years. So I'm like one of the newer players, and they're not used to seeing what I do or what I can do, and I think I still have like a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's currently 2 names etched onto that championship belt. What would it mean for you to be the 3rd name on there?
That would be everything for me. I've been competing in other games before this, and I've always wanted to just win an event. To be able to hold that belt up and actually have my name in it, like throughout history, that'd be amazing.
Now, coming into Poland, how do you feel your chances kind of fare there? Are there any players that you'd like to face on LAN, especially from the EU and CIS regions?
As far as the LAN goes, I think I'm going to be pretty prepared. This is the most preparation I'm going to have going into any tournament because of all the time I've had, and then leading up to it, I'm going to be able to go to boot camp for the first time for a LAN tournament. And I think as far as the European players go, I'd like a rematch with Kilson, and then probably Wenger as well, because they're both just very high octane players, and I just like to battle it out with them. I'd like a rematch, so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of interesting. You mentioned the boot camp there. What is the kind of situation with that? Where are you going to be doing that?
So I'm going to boot camp in Wroclaw with Saigib, Nasva, and I think Avek, and so we'll be down there for 10 days prior to the tournament.
So obviously, speaking of Saigib, you're going to be coming up against him this week, and he has an almost identical story to yourself. What's your kind of thought process coming into this game?
I definitely don't take Saigib lightly. He's definitely got very good aim, and that's something I think he relies on a lot. So I'm going to go into it trying to, I guess, make him miss a lot so I can get into his head. But with the picks and bans that I have and the maps, I'm thinking that I can definitely pull out the victory again. But definitely not taking him lightly.
Well, I'm definitely so excited to see that game. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, and good luck in this week's game.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you.